Men are moved by two levers only: fear and self-interest. Napoleon Bonaparte. Most people think being nice gets you ahead. They believe if you're kind and helpful, good things will come back to you. This isn't always true. The world doesn't reward simple goodness. Often, it rewards those who know how to play the game. We're not talking about being evil. We're talking about understanding how power works. We're talking about seeing the world as it really is, not how you wish it would be. There are people who will take advantage of your kindness. They will use your good nature against you. They see your willingness to help as weakness. You become a tool for their own goals. They don't care about you. They only care about what you can do for them. This isn't about being cynical. It's about being realistic. Believing everyone is good is a dangerous mistake. It leaves you open to manipulation. It makes you vulnerable to those who don't share your values. You must learn to see people for who they are, not who you want them to be. Watch their actions, not their words. Words are cheap. Actions reveal their true intentions. Those who understand power know this. They don't trust blindly. They assess every situation, every person. They look for weaknesses, for motives, for hidden agendas. They understand that everyone has a price. Everyone is driven by something. Finding that something is the key to influence. It's not about being manipulative for the sake of it. It's about understanding the forces at play. It's about protecting yourself. The world is a game, whether you like it or not. Some people play to win, others don't even know they're playing. If you're not aware of the rules, you'll be used as a pawn. You'll be moved around the board, sacrificed for someone else's gain. Understanding dark psychology is about knowing the rules. It's about learning how to protect yourself. It's about choosing your own moves. It's not enough to be good. You must also be smart. You must be observant. You must understand how people think and how they behave. Only then can you navigate the complexities of the world and achieve your goals. This isn't about becoming a master manipulator. It's about becoming a master of your own destiny. It's about seeing the world clearly and acting accordingly. The naive are often devoured, the wise endure. The human mind is a landscape of competing desires and hidden impulses. To navigate it effectively, you must understand its terrain. People are rarely motivated by pure altruism. Even acts of kindness often stem from a desire for recognition, validation, or a sense of self-worth. This isn't inherently negative, it's simply human nature. Recognizing these underlying motives allows you to predict behavior and influence outcomes. Study the patterns of human behavior, the common threads that connect seemingly disparate actions. What are the universal motivators? Fear, greed, lust, and the desire for power. These are the primal drives that shape human actions. Understand these, and you understand the core of human psychology. Look beyond the surface. People often present a carefully constructed facade, a persona designed to impress or deceive. Learn to see through the mask. Pay attention to body language, micro-expressions, and inconsistencies in their stories. These subtle cues can reveal their true thoughts and feelings. Observe how they react under pressure, how they treat those they perceive as inferior, and how they handle difficult situations. These are the moments when their true character is revealed. Analyze their past actions, their relationships, and their patterns of behavior. These provide valuable insights into their personality and their potential vulnerabilities. Emotions are powerful forces that can cloud judgment and distort perception. Learn to control your own emotions and to recognize them in others. Anger, fear, and sadness can be exploited by those who seek to manipulate you. Maintain a detached perspective, a calm and rational approach to every situation. This allows you to see things clearly and to make sound decisions. Cultivate emotional intelligence, the ability to understand and manage your own emotions and to empathize with the emotions of others. This skill is essential for building rapport, influencing others, and detecting deception. Self-deception is a common trap. People often convince themselves of things that are not true in order to protect their ego or to justify their actions. Be aware of your own biases and prejudices. Challenge your assumptions and be willing to admit when you are wrong. Seek feedback from trusted sources and be open to criticism. Continuous self-reflection is essential for maintaining a clear and objective perspective. Avoid the temptation to believe what you want to believe. Focus on the facts, on the evidence, and on the reality of the situation. Power dynamics are always at play, whether you're aware of them or not. Every interaction is a negotiation, a subtle dance of influence and control. Understand the power structures in your environment, the hierarchies, and the alliances. Identify the key players and their motives. Learn to navigate these power dynamics effectively without becoming entangled in unnecessary conflicts. Choose your battles wisely sometimes. It is better to retreat and regroup than to engage in a direct confrontation. Patience and strategic thinking are essential for long-term success. The art of manipulation is the art of influencing others to act in your best interest without them realizing they are being manipulated. This requires a deep understanding of human psychology, a mastery of communication, and a willingness to be ruthless. However, manipulation is a dangerous game. It can damage relationships, erode trust, and ultimately backfire. Use your knowledge of dark psychology with caution and with a clear understanding of the potential consequences. The most effective form of influence is often subtle and indirect. It involves building rapport, creating alliances, and appealing to people's self-interest. Ultimately, understanding dark psychology is about self-preservation. It's about protecting yourself from those who would seek to exploit you, to manipulate you, or to harm you. It's about developing the skills and the knowledge necessary to navigate the complexities of the world and to achieve your goals. It's not about becoming a villain. It's about becoming a survivor. It's about understanding the darkness in others so that you can protect the light within yourself. Ignorance is not bliss. It is a liability. 161, in its most brutal form, is the manipulation of information to control a narrative and ultimately a person or group of people. Consider the case of a powerful CEO, let's call him Mr. Thorne, of a struggling tech company teetering on the brink of collapse. Thorne, facing the potential loss of his empire and the humiliation of public failure, orchestrates a masterful, albeit Machiavellian, scheme to not only save his company, but to consolidate his power. He begins by subtly planting seeds of doubt about the company's current trajectory within the board. He subtly inflates minor setbacks, strategically exaggerating the negative impact of external market forces, skillfully directing the blame away from his own leadership. These carefully constructed narratives are not outright lies, but rather carefully curated truths, distorted and amplified to create a specific perception. Simultaneously, Thorn cultivates a close relationship with a junior analyst, a bright, ambitious individual, eager to prove their worth. He showers this analyst with praise, mentorship, and access to exclusive information, fostering a sense of loyalty and obligation. Unbeknownst to the analyst, Thorn is using them as a conduit to leak carefully selected information to the media, further fueling the narrative of impending doom. This calculated leak serves two purposes. It lowers the company's stock price, making it vulnerable to a takeover, and it creates a sense of urgency among the board members, pushing them closer to Thorn's desired solution. As the company's situation appears increasingly dire, Thorn presents himself as the only one capable of saving it. He proposes a radical restructuring plan, one that involves significant layoffs, the sale of valuable assets, and a complete overhaul of the company's leadership. He frames this plan as a painful but necessary sacrifice, a desperate measure to avoid complete ruin. The board, panicked and desperate, reluctantly agrees to his proposal. In reality, Thorn's plan is not about saving the company. It is about seizing absolute control. The layoffs eliminate his rivals. The sale of assets generates a massive influx of capital, and the leadership overhaul places his loyal allies in key positions. He consolidates his power through engineered crisis and exploits the fear and uncertainty of others. The junior analyst, now realizing they were used as a pawn in Thorn's elaborate game, is devastated by the consequences of their actions. They unwittingly contributed to the suffering of their colleagues and the erosion of the company's values. Thorn, however, remains unfazed, viewing the analyst as a necessary sacrifice for the greater good. His greater good, he justifies his actions by arguing that he saved the company from certain destruction, conveniently ignoring the fact that he orchestrated the crisis in the first place. This scenario exemplifies the ruthless application of 161. Thorn controlled the information flow, manipulated perceptions, and exploited the vulnerabilities of others to achieve his objectives. He used fear, uncertainty, and doubt as weapons, skillfully wielding them to bend reality to his will. His actions were driven by a cold, calculating ambition, devoid of empathy or remorse. He understood that in the game of power, perception is reality, and that those who control the narrative control the outcome. The key takeaway from this example is not to emulate Thorn's behavior, but to recognize it when it is being used against you. Be aware of the subtle ways in which information can be manipulated, and question the motives of those who control the flow of information. Develop a critical mindset and resist the temptation to blindly accept narratives presented to you. Seek out multiple perspectives and verify information from reliable sources. Trust your intuition and be wary of those who seek to exploit your vulnerabilities. Understanding the tactics of 161 is essential for protecting yourself from manipulation and for navigating the treacherous landscape of power. It's about recognizing the wolf in sheep's clothing before it's too late. It is about seeing through the carefully constructed facade and understanding the true intentions of those who seek to control you. This awareness is your greatest defense. The trap, in the context of 161, often hinges on the target's inherent weaknesses. These are not merely flaws in character, but deeply ingrained patterns of behavior, predictable responses to specific stimuli, and unconscious biases that can be exploited. The Machiavellian strategist understands that everyone possesses vulnerabilities. It is only a matter of identifying them and then subtly triggering them to initiate the desired outcome. The weak in this sense are not necessarily those lacking in intelligence or resources. Rather, they are individuals who lack self-awareness, who are easily swayed by emotion, and who are unwilling to challenge their own preconceived notions. The failure of the weak stems from a reliance on external validation, a susceptibility to flattery, and a desperate need to be liked. This neediness makes them easy targets for manipulation, as they are constantly seeking approval and affirmation from others, even those who may have ulterior motives. The skilled manipulator preys on this vulnerability, offering false praise and empty promises in order to gain influence and control. The weak also tend to be reactive rather than proactive, constantly responding to events as they unfold, rather than anticipating them and preparing accordingly. They are easily caught off guard, and their lack of foresight makes them vulnerable to sudden attacks and unexpected setbacks. They often find themselves in a perpetual state of crisis management, constantly scrambling to put out fires and address immediate problems without ever addressing the underlying causes. This reactive approach leaves them perpetually vulnerable to the whims of others, as they are always one step behind, struggling to keep up with the ever-changing landscape of power. Furthermore, the weak often lack the discipline and focus necessary to achieve their goals. They are easily distracted by trivial matters, and their attention is constantly shifting from one thing to another. They lack the ability to prioritize effectively, and they often waste their time and energy on tasks that are ultimately unproductive. This lack of focus prevents them from achieving their full potential, and it makes them easy targets for those who are more disciplined and focused. Another key characteristic of the weak is their inability to recognize and manage their own emotions. They are easily overwhelmed by feelings of anger, fear, and anxiety, and they often make rash decisions based on these emotions. They lack the emotional intelligence necessary to understand the impact of their actions on others, and they often alienate those around them with their impulsive behavior. The manipulator understands the power of emotion and uses it to cloud the judgment of the weak, exploiting their emotional vulnerabilities to achieve their own ends. Fear, for example, can be used to paralyze the weak, preventing them from taking action and leaving them vulnerable to exploitation. Similarly, anger can be used to provoke them into making mistakes, as they lash out in frustration and make impulsive decisions that they later regret. The weak also often fall prey to cognitive biases, which are systematic errors in thinking that can distort their perception of reality. These biases can lead them to make poor decisions, even when presented with clear evidence to the contrary. For example, the confirmation bias leads people to seek out information that confirms their existing beliefs, while ignoring information that contradicts them. This bias can make them resistant to new ideas and perspectives, and it can prevent them from recognizing their own errors. Similarly, the availability heuristic leads people to overestimate the likelihood of events that are easily recalled, such as dramatic or sensational events. This bias can lead them to make irrational decisions based on fear or anxiety, rather than on a rational assessment of the risks and benefits. The weak are also often susceptible to social proof, which is the tendency to conform to the behavior of others, even when it goes against their own judgment. This tendency can lead them to make poor decisions when they are in a group, as they are more likely to follow the lead of others, even if they know it is wrong. The manipulator understands the power of social proof and uses it to create a sense of conformity and compliance among the weak. By creating a perception that everyone else agrees with a particular course of action, they can pressure the weak into going along with it, even if they have reservations. In addition to these psychological vulnerabilities, the weak also often lack the necessary knowledge and skills to navigate the complex world of power. They may be ignorant of the rules of the game, unaware of the tactics used by manipulators, and unable to defend themselves against attacks. This lack of knowledge leaves them vulnerable to exploitation, as they are unable to recognize the warning signs of manipulation, and they lack the resources to protect themselves. The manipulator exploits this ignorance by withholding information, spreading misinformation, and creating a sense of confusion and uncertainty. By controlling the flow of information, they can control the perceptions of the weak and manipulate them into making decisions that benefit the manipulator. The trap, therefore, is not simply a physical construct, but a psychological web woven from the vulnerabilities and weaknesses of the target. The manipulator uses these vulnerabilities to create a situation in which the target is unable to escape and ultimately becomes a pawn in the manipulator's game. The key to avoiding this trap is to cultivate self-awareness, develop critical thinking skills, and resist the temptation to blindly accept the narratives presented by others. It is about understanding your own weaknesses, recognizing the tactics of manipulation, and developing the resilience to withstand the pressures of power. To navigate this perilous landscape, the aspiring Machiavellian must cultivate a profound understanding of human nature, dissecting the motivations and vulnerabilities that drive individuals. This understanding forms the foundation upon which effective strategies are built. It is not enough to simply identify weaknesses. One must also comprehend the psychological levers that can be manipulated to exert influence. Consider, for example, the innate human desire for validation and belonging. The manipulator can exploit this desire by offering praise and acceptance to those who align with their interests, while simultaneously ostracizing or criticizing those who resist. This creates a powerful incentive for individuals to conform to the manipulator's will, even if it means compromising their own values or principles. Similarly, the fear of social isolation can be a potent tool for manipulation. By creating a climate of fear and suspicion, the manipulator can discourage dissent and encourage obedience. Individuals may be reluctant to speak out against injustice or express dissenting opinions, fearing that they will be ostracized or punished. This creates a self-reinforcing cycle of conformity in which the manipulator's power is further enhanced. The careful study of history provides a rich source of examples of these tactics in action. Examining the strategies employed by successful leaders and manipulators throughout history can provide valuable insights into the dynamics of power and influence. By understanding how these tactics have been used in the past, one can better recognize and defend against them in the present. Moreover, the aspiring Machiavellian must develop a keen sense of observation, paying close attention to the behavior and interactions of others. This involves not only observing what people say and do, but also interpreting their non-verbal cues and understanding the underlying motivations that drive their actions. By becoming a skilled observer, one can gain a deeper understanding of the psychological landscape and identify opportunities to exert influence. The manipulation of information is a crucial aspect of the Machiavellian strategy. By controlling the flow of information, the manipulator can shape the perceptions of others and influence their decisions. This can involve withholding information, spreading misinformation, or presenting information in a biased or misleading way. The goal is to create a narrative that serves the manipulator's interests, while simultaneously discrediting or undermining opposing viewpoints. The aspiring Machiavellian must also cultivate a degree of emotional detachment, allowing them to make calculated decisions without being swayed by emotions. This does not mean that they must be devoid of empathy or compassion, but rather that they must be able to suppress these emotions when necessary in order to achieve their goals. Emotional detachment allows the manipulator to see situations objectively and to make decisions based on logic and reason rather than being influenced by sentimentality or personal feelings. Furthermore, the Machiavellian approach necessitates a willingness to be patient and to play the long game. Lasting power and influence are rarely achieved overnight and often require a sustained effort over a period of time. This may involve building alliances, cultivating relationships, and strategically positioning oneself for future opportunities. The key is to remain focused on the ultimate goal while patiently working towards its realization. The effective manipulator understands that perception is often more important than reality. By carefully managing their image and cultivating a reputation for competence and trustworthiness, they can gain the trust and confidence of others, even if their true intentions are less than honorable. This involves carefully crafting their public persona, controlling their interactions with others, and strategically using propaganda and public relations to shape public opinion. The skilled Machiavellian also recognizes the importance of adaptability and flexibility. The world is constantly changing, and the strategies that work in one situation may not be effective in another. Therefore, it is essential to be able to adapt to changing circumstances and to adjust one's approach accordingly. This may involve abandoning previously held beliefs, forging new alliances, or adopting new tactics. The key is to remain flexible and to be willing to change course when necessary in order to achieve one's goals. In addition to these strategic considerations, the aspiring Machiavellian must also be aware of the ethical implications of their actions. While the pursuit of power may be a driving force, it is important to consider the potential consequences of one's actions and to avoid causing unnecessary harm or suffering. This requires a careful balancing act between the pursuit of self-interest and the need to maintain a semblance of moral integrity. Ultimately, the Machiavellian approach is a complex and multifaceted one, requiring a deep understanding of human nature, a keen sense of observation, and a willingness to be ruthless and calculating. It is not a path for the faint of heart, but for those who are willing to embrace the dark side of power, it can be a powerful tool for achieving their goals. However, the true master understands that even the most cunning strategies are ultimately dependent on the willingness of others to be deceived, and that the most effective manipulation is that which is never detected. The long game requires not only the acquisition of power, but its preservation through subtlety and a constant vigilance against those who seek to usurp it. The Roman Empire, a sprawling behemoth of military might and political intrigue, offers a compelling parallel to the principles of 161. Its rise and eventual fall were not simply matters of brute force, but rather a complex interplay of strategic alliances, calculated betrayals, and an unwavering commitment to the acquisition and maintenance of power. The early republic, forged in the fires of revolution, understood the importance of adaptability. Consuls were elected for limited terms, preventing any single individual from amassing unchecked authority. The Senate, a body of experienced statesmen, served as a check on popular sentiment, ensuring that decisions were made with a long-term perspective. This system, though imperfect, allowed Rome to navigate the treacherous waters of Italian politics, forging alliances with some tribes while subjugating others, always with an eye towards consolidating its own dominance. As Rome expanded its reach, the challenges it faced became increasingly complex. The Punic Wars, a series of brutal conflicts against Carthage, tested the very limits of Roman resilience. Hannibal's invasion of Italy, a masterful display of military strategy, brought Rome to its knees, threatening to shatter the Republic entirely. Yet the Romans, through a combination of unwavering determination, tactical innovation, and a willingness to endure immense suffering, ultimately prevailed. They learned from their mistakes, adapting their tactics to counter Hannibal's strengths, and eventually turning the tide of the war. This victory, however, came at a price. The immense strain of the Punic Wars led to social and political upheaval, creating fertile ground for ambitious individuals to exploit. The late Republic was marked by a series of power struggles between rival factions, each vying for control of the state. Figures like Marius and Sulla, both brilliant military commanders, used their armies to advance their own political ambitions, plunging Rome into periods of civil war. These conflicts exposed the inherent weaknesses of the republican system, demonstrating that it could be easily manipulated by those who possessed sufficient military power and a willingness to use it. The rise of Julius Caesar marked the culmination of this trend. Caesar, a charismatic and ambitious general, conquered Gaul, amassed a loyal army, and defied the Senate's authority. He crossed the Rubicon, a symbolic act of rebellion, and marched on Rome, effectively ending the Republic. Caesar's rise to power was a masterclass in Machiavellian strategy. He understood the importance of cultivating popular support, using propaganda and public works projects to win over the masses. He also understood the need to neutralize his enemies, either through assassination, exile, or co-option. His assassination, however, proved to be a strategic miscalculation on the part of his opponents. While they sought to restore the Republic, their actions only created a power vacuum, leading to another round of civil wars. The eventual victor, Octavian, Caesar's adopted son, learned from his predecessor's mistakes. He avoided the title of dictator, opting instead for the more palatable title of princeps, or first citizen. He maintained the facade of the Republic while consolidating his own power behind the scenes. The Roman Empire, under the rule of emperors like Augustus, achieved a period of unprecedented peace and prosperity. However, this stability came at the cost of freedom. The Senate was reduced to a mere advisory body, and the emperor held absolute power. The empire's vast resources were used to maintain a massive army, which was essential for defending its borders and suppressing internal rebellions. The emperors also understood the importance of maintaining public order, using bread and circuses to keep the masses content. However, beneath the surface of this seemingly stable society, tensions were simmering. The gap between the rich and the poor continued to widen, and corruption was rampant throughout the government. The later years of the Roman Empire were marked by a slow but steady decline. A series of weak and incompetent emperors led to political instability and economic stagnation. Barbarian invasions became increasingly frequent and devastating. The empire was eventually divided into two halves, the Western Roman Empire and the Eastern Roman Empire, in an attempt to better manage its vast territories. The Western Roman Empire eventually collapsed in 476 AD, while the Eastern Roman Empire, also known as the Byzantine Empire, continued to thrive for another 1,000 years. The fall of the Roman Empire was a complex and multifaceted event, but one of the key factors was a failure to adapt to changing circumstances. The empire's vast size and bureaucratic complexity made it difficult to respond effectively to new threats. Its reliance on slave labor stifled innovation and economic growth, and its political system became increasingly rigid and unresponsive to the needs of the people. The Roman Empire's story serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of complacency, the importance of adaptability, and the ultimately fragile nature of power. It underscores the 161 necessity of constant vigilance and the understanding that even the most formidable structures can crumble from within. The lessons gleaned from its ascent and demise resonate through the ages, offering insights into the timeless dynamics of power, strategy, and the human condition. Its rise was a testament to ambition, its fall a consequence of hubris and decay. The 161 perspective, applied to the psychology of power, reveals that the decay of Rome was not merely a matter of external pressures, but a deep-seated erosion of the collective psyche. Consider the mindset of the late Roman elite. Insulated by wealth and privilege, they became detached from the realities faced by the common citizen. This detachment fostered a sense of entitlement and a neglect of civic duty. Their pursuit of personal pleasure and political maneuvering overshadowed the needs of the empire as a whole. The ability to empathize with the populace, to understand their grievances and aspirations, was progressively lost. This disconnect created a breeding ground for resentment and ultimately undermined the social fabric. A society fractured by inequality and distrust is a society vulnerable to collapse, no matter how strong its armies or grand its monuments. The rot started not in the borders, but in the hearts and minds of those in control, blinded by their own self-importance. Furthermore, the Roman political system, once a source of strength, became a hotbed of intrigue and corruption. Ambitious individuals sought power not through service, but through manipulation and treachery. Political assassinations, conspiracies, and bribery became commonplace. The focus shifted from the common good to personal gain. This created a climate of instability and undermined the legitimacy of the government. When leadership is perceived as self-serving and corrupt, trust erodes and the foundation of authority crumbles. People lose faith in the system and become less willing to sacrifice for the collective good. In essence, the psychological contract between ruler and ruled is broken, and the empire starts to resemble a house of cards. The constant vying for power created a cycle of violence and instability, weakening the empire from within. The Roman military, initially a model of discipline and efficiency, also suffered a decline in morale and effectiveness. The reliance on barbarian mercenaries, while initially providing manpower, ultimately diluted the Roman identity and loyalty. These mercenaries often lacked the same commitment to the empire as Roman citizens and were more likely to switch sides or mutiny. Moreover, the constant warfare and expansion strained the empire's resources and manpower. Overextension of military capacity led to logistical challenges and difficulties in defending vast borders. The psychological toll of constant conflict also took its toll on the soldiers, leading to fatigue, disillusionment, and a decline in fighting spirit. The professional soldier was replaced by a mercenary, motivated more by pay than by patriotism, a critical shift in the internal dynamics. The Roman economy, despite its initial prosperity, was also plagued by underlying weaknesses. The reliance on slave labor stifled innovation and economic growth. Slaves had no incentive to improve efficiency or develop new technologies. This limited the empire's ability to adapt to changing economic conditions. Moreover, the vast wealth of the empire was concentrated in the hands of a few elites, while the majority of the population lived in poverty. This inequality created social unrest and resentment. The government's attempts to address these problems through price controls and other interventions often backfired, exacerbating the situation. The lack of economic mobility and opportunity created a sense of hopelessness among the lower classes, further contributing to the empire's decline. A system designed to benefit the few at the expense of the many is inherently unsustainable in the long run. The cultural sphere also played a significant role in the decline of the Roman Empire. The traditional Roman values of discipline, frugality, and civic virtue were gradually replaced by a culture of hedonism, materialism, and decadence. Public spectacles such as gladiatorial combats and chariot races became increasingly popular, distracting the population from the serious problems facing the empire. The arts and literature declined in quality, reflecting a loss of creativity and intellectual vitality. The traditional Roman religion was also challenged by new religions, such as Christianity, which offered a different worldview and a different set of values. This cultural shift undermined the unity and cohesion of the empire. A society that loses sight of its core values and embraces self-indulgence is a society ripe for collapse. The pursuit of pleasure and the neglect of duty become the hallmarks of a civilization in decline. In essence, the fall of Rome was a complex interplay of psychological, political, economic, military, and cultural factors. The failure to adapt to changing circumstances, the erosion of civic virtue, the corruption of the political system, the decline of the military, the weaknesses of the economy, and the cultural shift towards decadence all contributed to the empire's demise. The 161 perspective emphasizes the importance of understanding the interconnectedness of these factors and the role of human psychology in shaping the course of history. The lessons of Rome are still relevant today, reminding us of the importance of vigilance, adaptability, and the preservation of core values. The empire's story serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of complacency, the importance of strong leadership, and the ultimately fragile nature of power. The boardroom was silent, save for the soft hum of the air conditioning. 4 figures sat around a mahogany table, the polished surface reflecting the cold light of the recessed ceiling fixtures. The air was thick with unspoken tension. This was not a meeting about quarterly profits or market share. This was about survival. One of the individuals, a woman named Evelyn, was the CEO of a multinational corporation, a behemoth in the tech industry. Her company, Omnicorp, had dominated the market for years, but now a disruptive startup threatened to dismantle her empire. The startup, Novatech, had developed a revolutionary technology that could render Omnicorp's products obsolete. Evelyn had underestimated Novatech at first, dismissing them as a fleeting trend, a momentary irritation. But as Novatech's market share grew and Omnicorp's began to shrink, she realized the gravity of the situation. Her initial arrogance had blinded her to the true threat. Evelyn's options were limited. She could try to compete with Novatech head-on, investing heavily in research and development to create a rival product. But that would be a costly and time-consuming endeavor, with no guarantee of success. She could try to acquire Novatech, but the startup's founders were fiercely independent and unlikely to sell, or she could resort to more unconventional methods that fell outside the bounds of ethical business practices. She glanced at the other three individuals in the room, each a master of their respective fields. There was Marcus, a corporate lawyer known for his ruthless negotiation tactics and his ability to exploit loopholes in the law. Beside him sat Julian, a private investigator with a reputation for uncovering compromising information and orchestrating smear campaigns. And finally, there was Anya, a cybersecurity expert, a master of digital espionage and sabotage. Evelyn had assembled this team not to brainstorm innovative solutions, but to wage a war of attrition, a war fought in the shadows. Evelyn initiated the discussion with a chillingly calm demeanor. She outlined the situation with brutal honesty, acknowledging the existential threat posed by Novatech. She spoke of the need to protect Omnicorp's shareholders, its employees, and its legacy. She framed her actions not as a matter of personal ambition, but as a matter of corporate responsibility. It was a carefully crafted narrative designed to justify the morally questionable actions she was about to propose. The first phase of the plan involved Marcus, who would initiate a series of lawsuits against Novatech, alleging patent infringement and unfair business practices. The lawsuits were designed to tie up Novatech's resources, distract its management, and create a cloud of uncertainty around its future. Marcus was instructed to use every legal maneuver at his disposal to drag the proceedings out for as long as possible and to inflict maximum financial damage on Novatech. The goal was not necessarily to win the lawsuits, but to bleed Novatech dry. The second phase of the plan involved Julian, who would launch a covert investigation into Novatech's founders and key employees. He was tasked with uncovering any dirt, any secrets, any vulnerabilities that could be used to discredit them. Julian was authorized to use any means necessary, including surveillance, wiretapping, and even blackmail. His targets included not only Novatech's executives, but also their family members and close associates. The goal was to create a climate of fear and distrust within Novatech, to sow discord among its ranks, and to undermine its morale. Julian's investigation would be entirely off the books, with no paper trail and no connection to Omnicorp. He would operate in the shadows, leaving no trace of his involvement. The third phase of the plan involved Anya, who would launch a series of cyber attacks against Novatech's infrastructure. She would target its servers, its databases, and its communication networks. The goal was to disrupt Novatech's operations, steal its intellectual property, and damage its reputation. Anya would use sophisticated hacking techniques to bypass Novatech's security measures and to conceal her tracks. She would also spread misinformation online, planting false rumors and leaking damaging documents to the press. Her actions would be designed to create chaos and confusion, to undermine Novatech's credibility, and to drive away its customers and investors. The cyber attacks would be carefully orchestrated to appear as if they were the work of rival companies or disgruntled employees. Evelyn emphasized the importance of secrecy and deniability. She made it clear that no one involved in the plan could afford to be caught. The consequences of exposure would be catastrophic, not only for Omnicorp but also for each individual involved. She reminded them of the immense risks they were taking, but also of the immense rewards. If they succeeded, Omnicorp would remain the dominant player in the market, and they would all be richly compensated. If they failed, they would face financial ruin, criminal prosecution, and social ostracism. The stakes were high, but so was the potential payoff. The meeting concluded with a chilling silence. Each member of the team understood their role, their responsibilities, and the potential consequences of their actions. They were about to embark on a dangerous and morally ambiguous mission, a mission that would test their loyalty, their integrity, and their willingness to cross the line. The execution of the plan began swiftly and efficiently. Marcus filed the lawsuits, Julian launched his investigation, and Anya initiated the cyber attacks. Novatech was immediately thrown into disarray. Its resources were strained, its management was distracted, and its employees were demoralized. The lawsuits dragged on for months, costing Novatech millions of dollars in legal fees. Julian's investigation uncovered a series of minor indiscretions and personal failings, which were then leaked to the press, damaging the reputations of Novatech's founders. Anya's cyber attacks crippled Novatech's operations, leading to data breaches, service disruptions, and customer complaints. As Novatech struggled to cope with the onslaught, its market share plummeted and its stock price crashed. Evelyn watched with cold satisfaction as Novatech began to unravel. Her plan was working perfectly. Omnicorp's stock price rebounded, its market share stabilized, and its dominance was once again secure. But as she savored her victory, she failed to notice the subtle signs of discontent within her own company. Some of her employees were troubled by the unethical tactics she had employed. They questioned the morality of her actions and wondered if she had gone too far. The culture of Omnicorp began to change, as fear and suspicion replaced trust and collaboration. Evelyn had won the battle, but she was slowly losing the war. The pursuit of power and the ruthless pursuit of profit had come at a cost that she was only